I had seen a poll from Gallup, and it said a majority of young Americans would choose socialism over capitalism for the future of the country. And I just thought, what? Like, are you kidding me? I thought that we knew that that was a bad idea. I thought that that was pretty established.
Socialism is a structure where you have democratic control over your life. And so if it's not democratic, it can't be socialism.
I want to make my own choices about what my healthcare plan is, where I send my kids to school. Socialism is more a system where politicians are going to make those choices for you.
Socialism felt like it was so compatible with my Christian roots. So much about providing for people the things that they need was actually exactly the type of world that we were supposed to live in.
Socialists are always going to promise you free tuition, free healthcare, free everything, but they will never promise you freedom.
My daughter's not a tragedy. She's one of 40,000 people a year dying from lack of health care in this country. Are these people the expendables in this country, all for the sake of the mighty dollar?
I'm a middle school math teacher here in Crown Heights, so I teach pre-algebra to the 6th graders, and I teach early high school level algebra to the 7th graders. So basically my school is gonna have a in-person learning and digital learning at the same time so that I can be on a Zoom with my students at home while also with the students in the classroom. I feel kind of lucky having this smart board. I know there are schools that are severely underfunded. They don't have anything like this.
There are definitely different types of socialism. I always call myself like a non-denominational socialist because there's so many. I believe the means of production should be democratically controlled and produced. And what that means for me is that, energy, housing, healthcare, education, finance, and transportation should all be controlled publicly and not run for a profit motive. I was definitely informed by being a teacher and seeing firsthand what my students are going through, how they can't afford textbooks, they're having to leave their homes, they're missing this, they're missing that. I have students that are tired all the time because they don't have a bed of their own. Meanwhile, you have billionaires just reaping in profit after profit after profit every single year. I was just so frustrated by what was going on in my community and just wanting to know that I could do something to fight for my community locally. It was a very I'm gonna protect my block. Between 2017 and 2020, you have the election of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Julia Salazar, waves of socialists around the country, and I saw there was a place for those politics and those voices inside the parties. And we won this election. We won by huge margins.
I wanted him here because I want y'all to get a familiar face. This is brother JABARI BRISPORT, Senator-elect of the 25th Senate District.
We can take those people who have so much, we can hold them by their ankles and shake them until the gold coins fall out because our communities are suffering and we need the money.
The Democratic Socialist movement is being driven by millennial Zoomers, younger people. It is a multiracial, multi-ethnic movement. And equality and fairness is the huge drive. So many millennials, younger people are interested in socialism because we can see so clearly the failings of capitalism. We've had 2 recessions. I graduated into one recession and here I'm in another recession already. And it's I'm only 32. These boom and bust cycles are not working, especially when there's no boom. People understand that wealth is too concentrated at the top right now. Capitalism is failing and a democratic socialism is the answer.
The word socialism has crept into our political vocabulary more frequently in recent years.
Wealth and income inequality, to my mind, is the great moral issue of our time. It is the great economic issue of our time, and it is the great political issue of our time.
You describe yourself as a democratic socialist, and that's not an easy term for a lot of Americans.
The value for me is that I believe that in a modern, moral, and wealthy society, no person in America should be too poor to live. That's what I think.
That seems simple.
It seems pretty simple.
If we let them, they will turn our country into a socialist utopia. And history has taught us that path only leads to pain and misery.
And a vote for any Democrat tomorrow in North Carolina is a vote for the rise of radical socialism and the destruction of the American dream.
I think a lot of Americans don't know what it means. I think most people think of socialism and they think of fairness and universal provision of services. And I think of socialism as government control, politicians controlling the outcomes rather than individual families and consumers and businesses.
The definition of socialism is any economic structure where the people who do the work every day have ownership and democratic control over the work that they do. On the small scale, it could be, having a staff meeting among the 12 people that work at a diner. On the large scale, it could mean the CEO has to run for re-election. The thing that makes them both socialism is that everybody who works there has a say in how things are run.
I want to make my own choices about what my healthcare plan is, where I send my kids to school, what products I buy. We need freedom, and I believe socialism is the opposite of freedom. Really, I haven't seen so much interest in socialism in my lifetime. And so I am troubled by this, that young people have been indoctrinated with this idea that less capitalism and more socialism is the way to go.
I had seen a poll from Gallup, and it said a majority of young Americans would choose socialism over capitalism for the future of the country. And I just thought, what? Are you kidding me? I thought that we knew that that was a bad idea. I thought that that was pretty established. We need to make it clear that there are young Americans that are against this ideology. I understand why they would be frustrated. You have people who are paying more in student loan debt per month than they are paying in their rent. No wonder they're going to look at what Bernie Sanders says and AOC says and say, yes, I need a clean break. I need this opportunity. I think the concept of being scared for the future, not being able to move forward the way other generations have been able to move forward in their late 20s and in their early 30s is very scary to this generation, to millennials and Gen Z. And what's really important in terms of what my generation doesn't understand and what's so dangerous is that the Democratic Socialists of America, what they'll do is they'll increase taxes and increase regulation in order to gain control slowly of these businesses. I don't think if they understood the history of socialism, they would be socialists. What looks good on paper for socialism never comes out. What happens is you have the economy fail after implementing socialism, and then people are able to have corruption seep in, the government seizes massive amounts of power. That's how you end up like Venezuela. Venezuela, Cuba, any of those situations. Now we're working to get proactive by teaching the next American generation the dangers in socialism. Hey, there you are. Okay, so first thing I want to talk about is you told me a little bit about when you were growing up, you heard Chavez say,
once a week. So we have to look this huge line of people, probably 500 people, and once you got...
Just because we do have problems as a society doesn't mean we should go try a new ideology that has been tried and failed numerous times.
And that's also a danger of giving more and more power to government, is that politicians oftentimes abuse power. Socialism didn't work in Cuba. Socialism didn't work in North Korea. Socialism didn't work in Soviet Union. There's no good socialism, in my opinion.
In the grocery store in Venezuela, it's just empty shelves all over. Didn't matter where you were gonna buy cereal, beans, basic things, it was just empty. And then while in here we have all of these different kind of things that we could ever buy, and in Venezuela it's just not possible. We all take for granted what we have at some point until we lose that. I was born and raised in Venezuela. I came to the United States when I was only 17 due to socialism. I left because I was doing campaigns against the government and I knew it wasn't going to end up very well for me. So I started doing politics when I was 16, and I was the last generation to do a campaign against Chavez and the first generation to do a campaign against Maduro.
In Venezuela today, there were new protests against President Nicolas Maduro.
Tens of thousands of demonstrators crowded streets across Venezuela as a cloud of uncertainty hangs over the future of the South American country. He says there is no work forcing the family to make difficult decisions.
So it's either you buy them shoes to go to school or you feed them. No son las dos cosas. No se puede ser. You can't have it both ways.
I knew I wasn't going to have a future. I knew I was not going to be free. In Venezuela, we have people walking from Venezuela to Colombia just to escape socialism. And I remember telling my mom in the airport, I will come back. I will just go study English and then I will come back. But when I got here, I saw things so different. That if you work hard enough, you were going to have nice things, that you were going to have what you wanted. In Venezuela, it doesn't matter how hard you work, you were not going to be safe. And I knew that I was speaking up against the government, so I knew that my life wasn't going to be as safe as I wanted it to be. I couldn't have freedom in Venezuela. When they hear the word free, that's what they go for, without knowing the consequences. Something that I always say is that socialists are always going to promise you free tuition, free healthcare, free everything, but they will never promise you freedom.
What are the main differences between your kind of socialism and the one being imposed in Venezuela?
To equate what goes on in Venezuela with what I believe is extremely unfair. I'll tell you what I believe in terms of democratic socialism. I agree with what goes on in Canada and in Scandinavia, guaranteeing health care to all people as a human right.
When people come to me with any fears about socialism, it may just be totalitarianism, right? That's the red baiting. That's been the history of how socialism has been discussed. The things we're advocating are things that have widespread approval, like, healthcare for all has widespread approval. Canceling rent is extremely popular. A Green New Deal is extremely popular. Free public college is extremely popular. These are all very popular positions. The government has been able to provide incredible service for people at bare minimum costs. People love their government programs. I mean, people love their Medicare, they love their Social Security, which are things that socialists fought for. And they may be too far left for certain corporate donors, but in terms for the American people, I don't think so.
Present for the camera, Shalene.
Oh, Shalene was always that kid that was just trying to be a superstar, whatever she did. She was extremely funny. She was a tomboy. She had a lot of fun in her. She was full of laughter. She was my oldest. She taught me how to love. Well, I was working as a chief financial officer, so I was really at the height of my career as an accountant. We were living that quote-unquote American dream. I thought I had made it. I really had a false sense of security. Her and her brother on Christmas Eve had been playing around at their dad's home. They had been doing a dance-off. She had fallen at that point and torn the ACL in her knee. I was actually on the way out of town for a business retreat. She was telling me that her leg was hurting her and the pain had increased so much that she decided to go to the emergency room. Once Shalene got to the back of the ER, she was in a constant battle with the staff to get the testing that she thought was necessary and also something for the pain. Shalene walked into the hospital with a red swollen leg, a black female with sickle cell trait and crying of extreme pain. Those are all risk factors and symptoms of a blood clot. She kept begging. This is when I got the third and final phone call from the hospital. And she's crying and she's like, "Mommy, they're not helping me. They told me I need to go get insurance and see a specialist." I promised her, the last thing I said to Shalyn as she died was, I'm right here, Shalyn. Mommy's right here. I love you, and you will not have died in vain. My daughter died over a couple $1,000s that it would have taken to treat her because she couldn't provide proof of insurance. I almost fell out when I realized, well, my daughter's not a tragedy. She's not a tragedy. She's one of 40,000 people a year dying from lack of health care in this country. Are these people the expendables in this country, all for the sake of the mighty dollar? When I had to hold my daughter as she took her last breaths, that old Amy died with her as well.
My daughter, Shalyn, was in school to be an RN. And make sure we elect Bernie Sanders as the next president of the United States of America.
I'm very excited to be part of the movement that's for justice, that's for equity. It has made my life a million times more worthwhile than when I was working to be a CFO. This is where you're seeing a change in this country happening, because there comes a point where the working class will stand up and say, we have had enough.
With any encounter they come across that's hardship, and we should be prioritizing.
You know, I was raised as a Church of God in Christ, like really conservative Christian. Socialism felt like it was so compatible with my Christian roots. So much about providing for people the things that they need, so much about treating your brother the way that you want to be treated, so much about collectivism and what it means to be accountable to a group and to, you know, an ideology. It was actually exactly what I felt like, the intent of like the type of world that we were supposed to live in. So I took it on right away and I was never ashamed of it. I'm part of the largest and fastest growing socialist organization in the country, the Democratic Socialists of America. And what we mean by socialism is that in a country with so much excess, it's not equitable that some people are starving. It's not right that families have to make a decision between putting food in the fridge or buying prescription drugs. I worked for Verizon Wireless. I got the job in 2010, right out of college. They really believed in this thing called manager discretion, which means your manager is your ruler over everything, your schedule, the rules, whether or not you could take a break. It's very difficult to deal with the reality of people spending thousands of dollars on a phone. When we were dealing with all of these like really messed up working conditions, and people don't really seem to care. It's like when you work in retail, they barely even see you as human. You're a way to get to the things that they want. Working for Verizon, every single quarter they're like, we have to have a record amount of profit. We have to make more profit than we made the last time. Well, where is the end of this, right? Because you want this record profit. Like when is enough going to be enough? And just seeing what was happening with the government, that actually there was never going to be enough for them. It was definitely a time for populist type of messages. We were talking about people coming together. We're all each other's best comrades, best chance to even get remotely close to the things that we're fighting for in the immediate future.
I think the best way for workers to be able to have more clout is to have a thriving, booming economy. You know, people don't like to talk about capitalism, and I get pushback all the time, well, you really shouldn't talk about capitalism because people have a negative reaction to the word capitalism. I think that someone who has a great business idea that becomes extraordinarily successful provides value to a lot of people. And as the policies have increasingly implemented very basic tenets of socialism, high taxes on the wealthy, more regulation of businesses. Smaller businesses can't bear the burdens of all of these regulations.
The government's going to give all these free things to people, whether it's free rent, free food, free healthcare, free childcare, free education. At some point, somebody has to pay for that, right? And in a lot of these socialist countries, to be able to provide all these free things for people, they put very high taxes on the people who are producing and the businesses that create the wealth in the first place. That when you provide all these free things, you put so much weight on the backs of the businesses and the workers who are providing great service to the economy because they provide goods and services that people voluntarily want to buy. And then we're going to punish them with high taxes.
This is the 88 Drive-In. The theater was built in 1972 by a company out of Texas. And they, interestingly enough, ran it as an X-rated movie theater. The neighbors, of course, weren't very happy about that, especially because there's a grade school right next door. So they did things to try to shut the theater down. And finally, somebody just got mad and firebombed the house that was on the property. So my dad bought the theater sort of as a fire sale, but it was his dream. He saved every penny for 20 years and finally bought his own theater. And I think for my parents, that was freedom. They got to run their theater their way. 3 years ago, there was an amendment passed in the state of Colorado to raise minimum wage 90 cents every year for 3 years. And that has really impacted us. We did wind up having to raise our prices to compensate for some of that. I also cut back about 5 people this year so that we could make up for those increasing costs. Was that what you did? We hire primarily young people, 16-year-olds. We offer them their first job often, and they're learning, how to come to work on time, how to do jobs, gain experience for when they go to another job. I can give somebody an opportunity that has no skills that's younger for, $7, $8, $9. But because of minimum wage, I just can't hire that many more. So I tend to look for people that already have some skills. It really hurts those entry-level jobs. It makes me kind of sad for the kids and for the community. This is sort of an economically challenged area, and for these kids to be able to work and take care of themselves takes a big burden off of their families. There seems to be this idea that if you have a business, you're bad, and if you make profit, you're bad. Without profit in my business, I can't expand my business and offer more jobs. It's very challenging, but it means a lot to me, and I know it means a lot to my customers. They say they've been coming since they were a child, and now they're bringing their child or their grandchild, and they're happy that as much as things change, sometimes some things stay the same.
I think people are ready for a change. They're tired of the same old. I think the end result we're all looking for is equity and justice, right? You are only as safe as the most vulnerable in our community. None of us knows what's going to befall us tomorrow. None of us knows what's going to happen to someone that we love.
When the whole situation about the virus started, I went to the grocery store and I saw some shelves empty. I was like, wait, this cannot happen here. I had the flashbacks from Venezuela. It makes me sad to know that there are some Americans that they don't know what socialism is like and they want to implement that in their country when we have just escaped Venezuela because of the socialist policies the government have been implemented since 1999. I think the question to them will be, so if you want socialism that bad, once it gets here, where are you going to go? Where are you going to escape to?
So just kind of like some of the flags we do. We do a lot of custom fire department, police officer, retiree type stuff. My generation is very creative, innovative, entrepreneurial. I mean, we sell our services on Fiverr, and we have Etsy businesses, and we have the coolest things on social media. And so I hope that they understand that they're being empowered by this capitalist economy. Left is telling our generation, freedom is when you don't have that responsibility or those burdens of life on your shoulders, where the government provides those things for you so that you are less stressed. I wish that we could accept those burdens of living in a free society and say, you know what, I want to provide for myself. I want to get a great job. I want to pay for my own health care insurance. For an individual to be personally responsible and take care of themselves, that really is a high tenet of capitalism and of the American way.
when I was running for office, I knew there was gonna be a story of like socialist teacher. It starts converting students, but like now, I might show them a thing. But when we talk about percents, I might show them, 1% owns this, 99% own this. What do you think about that? We have a very clear obsession with wealth and fame and fortune in this country, and we like idolize the rich and have a strong culture of like, someday that'll be me. Everyone can do it. Everyone can pull themselves up by their bootstraps. This is available to everyone, and if you haven't done it yet, it's your fault. And that's just not the case, You can't pull yourself up by bootstraps if you don't have any shoes. We need to start saying, we have a lot of people suffering in our community, and what's the best way we can lift the community and society up, instead of just focused on like, that one person we've idolized and said that we're gonna be like them too.
Hey, thanks for checking out CBSN Originals on YouTube. If you want to watch more documentaries, download the free CBS News app on your phone, tablet, smart TV, or any streaming device. You can also subscribe to our YouTube channel by clicking down here. Thanks for watching.